Step aside and wait at the back." The flight attendant's words cut like a blade, loud enough for passengers to hear, her tone dripping with arrogance. A young black woman stood frozen, humiliation burning as onlookers chuckled and shook their heads. Phones came up, recording her shame. But what they didn't realize was that this moment of open disrespect would ignite a reversal so shocking it would silence the entire cabin. Because minutes later, the same woman they mocked would return in full command of their fate. The hum of the airport was broken by a sharp voice. "Wait at the back with the others." The words dripping with disdain came from Diane Patterson, a senior flight attendant with nearly 3 decades at the airline. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a neat bun, her uniform crisp, her presence commanding. And now she was directing her authority toward a young black woman holding nothing more than a garment bag. Passengers nearby glanced up, curiosity sparking in their eyes. Some smirked. A few chuckled quietly. To them, it looked like just another passenger being put in her place. The young woman's face remained still, but inside humiliation burned hot. She lifted her airline ID slightly, her voice firm but even. "I'm Captain Taylor. I'll be commanding this flight." Diane's expression twisted. "Captain Hayes is scheduled for this flight. I've been briefing this crew for 15 minutes and heard nothing about a change. If you're looking for the customer desk, it's over there." Her dismissal was sharp and public. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably. Others, a group of suited men nearby, laughed quietly at the spectacle. Captain Taylor, still in civilian clothes, stood her ground. She had earned 4 gold stripes on her uniform through thousands of hours. Sleepless nights and relentless determination. But none of that mattered here. Not to Diane. Not to the onlookers entertained by her humiliation. "Please wait at the back," Diane repeated firmly, turning her back as if Taylor didn't exist. The sting of disrespect was sharp. But Taylor knew one thing her aggressor didn't. Within minutes, this public humiliation would turn into public reckoning. Taylor stepped into the restroom and unzipped her garment bag. One by one, she slipped into her crisp uniform. The white shirt, the tailored jacket, and finally the captain's hat. Each gold stripe on her sleeves caught the fluorescent light as if to remind her she belonged here. By the time she returned to the gate, she wasn't a dismissed stranger anymore. She was Captain Taylor. The chatter among crew members died instantly when she walked up. The posture of attendants shifted, eyes widened. Even passengers who had chuckled earlier now sat up straighter. And Diane, she froze mid-sentence, her face drained of color. "Good morning, I'm Captain Taylor, commanding Flight 1523 to Atlanta," Taylor announced, her voice sharp and unyielding. The silence that followed was deafening. Diane tried to stammer a response, something about confusion and uniforms. But the moment was gone. The power had shifted inside the cockpit. Taylor prepared for departure with her first officer, Bradley Thompson. But the tension didn't end there. Bradley, polite but skeptical, second-guessed her instructions. He leaned over to double-check her entries, questioned her chosen route, and shrugged dismissively at her safety-first approach. And then came the voice of management. William Hayes, a flight operations manager. Over the cockpit phone, his tone was clipped, his words sharp. "Executives are on board. Keep this tight. Captain, no more delays." Taylor swallowed the frustration. Her job wasn't to be liked. Her job was to keep 162 people alive. But just as the plane was ready to push back, a maintenance call came in. A pressure sensor discrepancy. Diane whispered to passengers that it was because of an inexperienced captain. Executives grumbled loudly about wasted time. The manager appeared at the cockpit door, pressing Taylor to ignore the alert. Every ounce of pressure pushed her to cave. But she didn't. She remembered her father's words. "Never let anyone rush you on safety. Not management, not passengers, not even another pilot." Taylor stood her ground. "We'll wait for a full inspection," she declared. The cabin erupted with groans. Executives shouted. William threatened her career. Diane whispered poison into the ears of nervous passengers. But Taylor refused to budge. Minutes stretched into hours. And then the truth landed like a thunderbolt. Maintenance confirmed the sensor wasn't faulty. There was a real pressure regulation failure at 35,000 FT. It could have led to catastrophic decompression. Lives would have been at risk. Her decision, the same one they mocked as weakness, had just saved every person on board. The executives who sneered. They were rebooked on another flight only to be caught in a weather diversion. The same weather Taylor had warned about hours earlier. The manager who threatened her. He now stood pale-faced as the CEO himself validated her decision publicly. And Diane, the flight attendant who had dismissed her, found herself shrinking under the captain's steady gaze. Her arrogance shattered in front of the very passengers she had tried to sway. At last, boarding resumed, passengers filed in, some whispering, some offering small nods of respect. Taylor stood at the door in full uniform, her voice calm, steady, commanding. "Good afternoon. Welcome aboard Skyway 1523. I'm Captain Taylor. Thank you for your patience today. Safety is always our first priority." The very words that had once been doubted now echoed with undeniable authority. She took her seat at the controls. The cockpit hummed with order, her hands precise over every switch and lever. Anthony Washington, her fellow black colleague, who had stepped in as first officer after Bradley suddenly fell ill, sat by her side, loyalty and trust radiating between them. The engines roared, the runway lights stretched ahead, and as the aircraft lifted into the storm-filled skies, Captain Taylor smiled faintly. The same people who once laughed at her, doubted her, and dismissed her now had no choice but to trust her with their very lives. She was no longer the woman told to wait at the back. She was the captain who refused to be broken, the one who turned humiliation into power, and the one who proved in front of an entire world that competence speaks louder than prejudice. And with every mile they soared above the storm, her message was clear. She had claimed her place, and no one would ever push her back again. If this powerful story shook you, don't just scroll past. Make your voice heard, smash that like button, share this video so the truth spreads, and comment where you're watching from and which moment hit you hardest. And don't forget subscribe now for more bold stories of justice.